Welcome back, scholars, to another e-lesson video. This is another essay enrichment lesson, this one over the Q1 and Q3 essays and assessing the issue. This is a simple method to use in your brainstorming process when you first see a Q1 or Q3 prompt. So more and more, the Q1 and Q3 essay tasks are becoming similar. The Q1 has historically always given a specific debatable issue for you to discuss, while the Q3 has, with some exceptions, given you a more broad philosophical issue to develop a position on. This, though, seems like it's changing with starting with rather the 2020 examination. And so since the Q3 is now starting to look more and more like the kind of topic you're given with the Q1, we can now use the same essential approach to writing both essays. So that's good news. So one of the best strategies for beginning a new Q1 or new Q3 essay is to look at the issue that you're given and take stock of what it is you're being asked to write about. This is especially helpful if you see a topic that you initially believe you know absolutely nothing about, as it can help you get some quick ideas down on the page. And it helps dispel that anxiety that a blank page looking right back at you can have. So how do I go about assessing the issue on a Q3 or Q1 prompt? Well, the technique I recommend is pretty simple. This method involves figuring out what the different sides to the issue are, whether it's pros and cons or actual sides within a debate, just trying to find out what those sides are. So to do this, you want to set up a simple T-chart and list the various reasons, examples, evidences, etc. on each side of the issue. This works for really any kind of Q1 or Q3 prompt that asks you about a specific issue. Whether that prompt is asking you whether something should or should not be done in the future, or if the prompt is asking you about the truth behind something in the present or the past, or if the prompt is asking you about the ethics or efficacy of something, or if the prompt is merely asking you to consider the most important factors. This particular method works for any of those kinds of prompts. To illustrate this technique, let's take a look at a released prompt. This is the Q3 from the 2010 Form B exam, which is the exam that students would have been given on the makeup day if they had, for whatever reason, missed the initial testing day. And the topic for this Q3 was the establishment of an annual Buy Nothing Day, a day on which no goods are purchased. And the whole premise behind this is to teach people about their consumerist behaviors and to help curb excessive consumerism, that sort of thing. So a day where everyone just kind of commits to not purchasing any goods. So let's go ahead and set up my T-chart here. On one side, Buy Nothing Day should be established. On the other side, Buy Nothing Day should not be established. This will help me evaluate the two sides and really understand the whole scope of this issue. So let's start with that left column there, reasons why Buy Nothing Day should be established. And these can be reasons or examples, really just anything that pops into my head that would support a Buy Nothing Day. So we'll start with the obvious. A Buy Nothing Day is designed to help raise awareness of excessive consumerism. And people being more aware of their consumerist behaviors can help out in a lot of different ways. For one, it could help people become more self-reliant. Two, it could help people become less wasteful, which in itself would help the planet at large, because one of the more serious side effects of consumerist society is how much resources it uses. Lastly, it could help people reduce their debt, to really examine their spending habits, which could reduce consumer debt and put people in stronger financial situations. Looking on the other side, why Buy Nothing Day should not be established. Well, if you take a whole day off of buying goods, that could actually hurt a specific sector of workers, especially those who work in the service industry and rely on daily tips. A sudden downturn, even for just one day in their business, could really impact their livelihoods. Similarly, this could also hurt hourly workers just in general, because any sort of business that knows a Buy Nothing Day is coming is going to schedule fewer workers to work that day, which means more people who work hourly wages are going to see shorter paychecks that month. In addition, anytime that you're trying to raise awareness or try to encourage a particular behavior on just one day, a lot of times that just becomes sort of an obstacle. People would likely make up for Buy Nothing Day by buying extra the day before or the day after, which kind of defeats the whole purpose. Lastly, a Buy Nothing Day is actually its goal, for what it's designed to do, it's not nearly as helpful as something like potentially higher sales taxes or VATs on consumer goods and the cost of express shipping, that sort of thing. Asking people to pay more money in the form of taxation on these items, that would do a great deal more to curb their purchases than just encouraging people not to do it on one specific day. Let's take a look at another prompt, this one a little bit different. Instead of asking us whether or not something should or should not be done, this prompt asks us about the truth of something in the present. It's from the 2019-2020 exam guide. And the topic here is Barbara Jordan, the former United States Congresswoman. Barbara Jordan's claim that private wants threaten national identity. And what she's referring to here is her belief that the interests of various groups, special interest groups, are so diverse and have so many different wants that there is no way to create any sort of national identity anymore. So let's go ahead and set up my T-chart. On the left side, private wants do threaten national identity. On the right side, private wants do not threaten national identity. Let's start off with the left column there. What are some reasons, examples, evidence supporting that private wants do threaten national identity? Well, right away, just in group dynamics in general, when you have different interests, different goals, different values, it makes it harder for that group to come together and pursue anything in common. And this is especially true when different groups or different members within a group want vastly different things. To Barbara Jordan's point, here in the United States, this is compounded because the various groups that she's referring to, whether it's regional groups or racial groups or religious groups or gender groups, whatever, those groups not only have different wants in America, but also a lot of times have different visions for what America's identity ought to be. And this is just kind of heightened today with the culture wars that we experience. Looking at that right column, what are some reasons why private wants do not threaten national identity? Well, I think right away of the fact that the U.S. has had special interest groups forever. This is not new. America was founded by, or built rather by a diverse group of people. And isn't historically America kind of defined by its diversity? Isn't that supposed to be a strength of our nation? So I think that Barbara Jordan isn't quite right here, that the problem isn't that different groups have different wants. That's just naturally going to happen. The problem comes when those different groups are unable to settle their differences. And I think that there's a real problem nowadays that we have where various extremist groups, mostly on the conservative political spectrum, are using various obstruction techniques and other techniques to pull the national discourse so far to the right that it kind of breaks our ability to find common ground. And so the problem isn't just that different groups want different things, it's that certain groups have broken the mechanism for settling these differences. Finally, let's take a look at one last prompt. I wanted to look at a prompt that didn't ask you to actually take a side in your essay. This is from 2007 from the Form B exam. This is the Q1 prompt from that year. And the topic was this: evaluate the most important considerations facing the person responsible for securing a new work of art or an artifact for a museum. So this is one of those prompts that's not actually asking you to take a side in something, but evaluate what those sides are. And so, of course, we can still use this same assessing the issue technique. We can use the same T-chart technique. So how do we put our T-chart together though? Since there aren't really clear sides to this issue, we can't really come up with pros and cons here because we're asked to kind of evaluate what a person should consider. We have to go a little more general here. So here's how we might set up a T-chart for this kind of prompt. On one column, why an item should be in a museum. And in another column, why an item should not be in a museum. That right there should help us figure out what these individuals should consider when deciding whether or not to put something in a museum. So let's start with that left column. Why an item should be in a museum? Well, one reason why, if it preserves the heritage of a culture, or if it celebrates some significant human achievement, or helps people learn where they've come from, or really even if it just helps us warn against repeating past mistakes. Any of those are good reasons why a particular item should be in a museum. So looking at the right column, why an item should not be in a museum. Well, if anything involving that item or that display gives misinformation or propaganda, it shouldn't be in a museum. If it celebrates not human achievements, but some sort of human misdeeds or miseries, that's not appropriate for a museum either. Or here's a big one. If the item in question is in the possession of a colonial power who stole it from a people, that's something we hear a lot about in the news. Various British museums especially being asked by a lot of countries around the world or former parts of their empire asked to give back the antiquities that they've stolen. And lastly, just if the item or artifact in any way diminishes or otherwise skews the culture it comes from, if it's presented in such a way that paints the culture in a light that's not true or designed to make that culture look diminished or deride them in some way, then it's not appropriate for a museum. So in the end, this simple technique of listing an issue's various sides, it's a quick and easy way to figure out the full scope of an issue, and it works with any kind of Q1 or Q3 prompt that presents you with a specific idea to take a position on. All right, scholars, that's it for this video. As always, if you have any questions about anything we're doing, please don't hesitate to contact me, and I'll see you when I see you.